There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch by Collider.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran. You know, this case of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, we've all followed it for so long, and all of the things that are coming out now, we'd, of course, wished and guessed and sort of hypothesized and theorized what actually happened. And now we're getting inside view of what did happen, except what did happen is coming from the perception of, in this case, the perpetrator releasing the FBI through his attorneys, releasing his notebook. And many people perceive it in a certain way. I perceive it in a certain way. I perceive it from someone who worked in homicide, someone who did these investigations. And I see in a lot of ways that it's self-serving. What Brian Laundrie wrote in his little notebook is a self-serving, his point of view of what occurred. And I don't feel sorry for Brian Laundrie, nor do I don't know, sort of put myself in his place. I think that there was some deviousness in this incident. You don't kill someone out of love. You murder someone out of hate and out of something that snaps inside you. So when we read this and he tries to put this across as love, you know, this is just something, I loved Gabby, but then you shouldn't have strangled her. You know, it's like, I want to read, and I'm not going to read the whole notebook because I did that on the show on Saturday night, but I just want to read some of it because it just in the way he wrote it. The temperature had dropped to freezing and she was soaking wet. I carried her as far as I could from the stream toward the car, stumbling, exhausted, in shock. When my illegible, let's say, I can't read what he wrote, I knew I couldn't safely carry her. Safely? You're worrying about safety? You're about to kill her. You're worrying about her safety. I couldn't safely carry her. I started the fire and spooned her as close to the heat. She was so thin, had already been freezing too long. I couldn't at that time realize that I should have started the fire first, but I wanted her out of the cold back to the car. From where I started the fire, I had no idea how far the car might be, only knew it was across the creek. He only knew these little things. Had only been around there. He knew the terrain. He knew the area. I find that outrageous. I find that, first of all, Gabby weighed all of about 120, 125 pounds. And someone pointed out to me, I think Joe Murray the other night, that Brian probably only weighed about 155. But you know something? Someone that you love, what's that old expression? He ain't heavy, he's my brother. Well, this was his fiance. I would have been able to carry her for miles. He all of a sudden couldn't carry her. And just to me, outrageous. Here's another paragraph. When I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead that eventually got larger. Her feet hurt, her wrist hurt, but she was freezing, shaking violently. While carrying her, she continued making sounds of pain. Laying next to her, she had little lapsing between violent shakes, gasping in pain, begging for an end to the pain. So he's going to put an end to it. She's begging. This is him going to put her out of her misery because she's begging to an end to her pain. She would fall asleep and I would shake her awake, fearing she wouldn't or shouldn't close her eyes if she had a concussion. So he's worrying about her closing her eyes because she had a concussion, yet he's going to kill her. This is premeditated. You can't tell me on the scene he decided to end her life. I also question, how did she end up alone? And how was she able to do this damage to herself without him being close by to come to her rescue, to save the day? I question that. He couldn't come to rescue her because he didn't intend to. He intended to kill her. I rushed home excuse me. She would wake in pain, start a whole painful cycle again. Sure, furious that I was the one waking her. She wouldn't let me try to cross the creek, thought like me that the fire would go out in her sleep and she'd freeze. I don't know the extent of Gabby's injuries, only that she was in extreme pain. I ended her life. I thought it was merciful. Thought it is what she wanted, but I see now all the mistakes I made. I panicked. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided to took her away pain, I knew I couldn't go on without her. So he was merciful. He it's like killing an animal that got injured. He's going to take all her pain away. I just don't buy any of this stuff. I just cannot buy that this was merciful of him. That he didn't premeditatively intend to kill his fiance. It was because she was so cold. Is that why? No, because I think that it goes back to the domestic violence incident with the Moab police. That their lives together was a series of different levels of domestic violence. Did he love her? Did she love him? I don't know. It's a strange thing to kill someone that you love. And in this way, you have to realize we all waited for the results of the autopsy. And what the autopsy said was death by asphyxia, which equaled strangulation. And in this instance, throttling, grabbing someone around and shaking them like a shaken baby syndrome, throttling. So signs of that. That's an extremely violent act. It's not something that someone that loves someone does. It's something that someone that wants to make up excuses for why he put her out of her misery, as he so explained it. I'm going to go to J.B. Buono. Here's some information, perhaps some information that I didn't report on the other night or from a different perspective. Let's play a little bit of this. And I think News Nation always has a pretty good point of view.
But more importantly, ask him why he doesn't release Roberta Laundrie's letter to her son.
A letter to her son. So Roberta authored a letter to her son. Can you explain more of what you're referencing here? Because this is news to us.
Well, the letter has, Mr. Bertolino has the letter. I don't have a copy of the letter, but the letter appears to be written to Brian after Gabby was killed. And there's some pretty extreme things that she said in there that without having the letter here to quote it, I don't want to say, but I will simply tell you that there's some pretty extreme things that were contained within that letter.
When was this letter authored by Roberta Laundrie, and where is the whereabouts of it now? What can you tell us about it from those questions?
The letter is undated, so it's uncertain when it was written, but certainly based upon what's contained within the letter, it would appear as though the letter were written after Gabby was killed and before Brian took his life.
You know, the time frame of so much of this is so important because, of course, and I'm not even really referring to the civil suit. I'm referring to more of what was said and what was done during the time frame. And so Brian was driving home from Moab, from Utah. And at what point did he tell his parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, that he had, in fact, killed Gabby? That's pretty damn important. And again, what time frame did Roberta Laundrie write this letter back to Brian? All of this is so pertinent and so important, well, to us, and may be important to the civil suit, although I'm not going to get into the civil suit now, but as you could see, none of these documents, Brian's notebook or Roberta Laundrie's note to Brian, were dated.
And the letter is currently in the possession of Mr. Bertolino.
Was that one of the items?
I will tell you, by the way, that on the envelope that contained the letter, the words "burn after you read this" were written.
You know, what's that supposed to mean? His mom writes on the envelope of the letter that she sends him, burn after you read this. It was that obviously she wanted no one else to read this. I find that a little bizarre.
And who authored those words? I'm just trying to be as precise as I can.
Roberta Laundrie.
And again, that was written and that was delivered to whom?
Brian.
And this one of the items that was retrieved today from the FBI, Tampa? And
Yes.
And is this, you have alluded to me in multiple phone calls, Pat, about evidence that you have to back up the allegations that you have made in the civil lawsuit. Is this one of the pieces of evidence that you've been alluding to for so long?
Absolutely.
And where does the letter fit in to the, as far as this story that we are now learning of, with Brian's words, his final words as revealed in the notebook? Where does the letter fit in relation to the story in the notebook?
I don't know that the letter necessarily fits in with the story of what's in the notebook. I'm simply responding to Mr. Bertolino suggesting that he's trying to be transparent, but he's picking and choosing what he wants to be transparent about.
So this is now you believe, of course, that this was released by Stephen, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you believe that this was released by Stephen Bertolino as a chess move in the civil lawsuit?
I candidly don't know why it was released by Mr. Bertolino. That was a question that I've been pondering since it was released. I don't know if it was released in an effort to try to find some kind of sympathy for Brian because of what's contained in there. I don't see that. If he's trying to garner sympathy, I don't think that's going to work because it's an admission that he killed her. And even more so, if this was the woman he loved and there's supposed to be some sympathy, he left her body there and told no one where she was, or at least not Mike.
You know something, 100%. Is that a sign of love to murder the person you love and leave their body out in the elements so it can be exposed to the elements, to decay and to be eaten by animals? Is that a sign of love? I think not.
Clients where she was.
One more time. The cover of the envelope, according to you, did you see this envelope today at FBI Tampa?
I did.
And again, it said what?
Words to the word.
You know, Lieutenant Peter Pranzo has such a brilliant statement in the chat. Brian thinking about assisting her death to relieve her pain. Manslaughter. A few years and he would be out. A very cunning young killer. Only my opinion. Lieutenant Pete, I think you hit it right on the head. Maybe at this point he didn't intend to commit suicide. He intended to build some kind of lesser charge. And this is the proof of the pudding. But however, down the road, of course, that didn't work out. And he, in fact, committed suicide.
And this may not be the exact words, but it was burn after you read this.
And it was a letter that Roberta was giving to Brian.
Yes.
And so burn after you read this. Why would in your words, why would a mother deliver that letter to her son? This is a family that was on vacation together after returning, after Brian returned home. Can you provide some clarity as to why Roberta would say that to her son and do so in the form of a letter? I mean, they're communicating, I'm sure. I mean, Brian returned home to Northport. He's returning back and living under the same roof as his mother and father. So then why would this letter exist?
I don't know if that letter was written before or after he came back to Northport. But there was the most I want to say is that there was an offer to assist Brian with some things in that letter.
An offer to assist Brian with some things in that letter. You have alluded to, Pat, and it's written in black and white in the lawsuit. You have made the claim that Chris and Roberta Laundrie attempted to help their son Brian flee the country. Is that a part of this letter, this note? No, that's not a part of the note. Not to my recollection, no. Because we're now getting some different, you know, I'm just trying to figure out exactly where this factor.
Folks, if you remember back during these times, the Laundries were accused of assisting Brian. Do you remember he came home? He was staying in their house. He refused to be interviewed, which is his right by the police or the FBI. He invoked counsel. All of a sudden, they go on a family camping trip, which seemed a bit bizarre, to the Myakkahatchee Preserve. And remember, there was a big thing with the Northport police. They were supposed to have 24/7 surveillance on Brian, and somehow he was able to sneak out of that house, which was sort of a black eye to the Northport police. And then that apparently is the time frame where he committed suicide. And in the Myakkahatchee Preserve, if you remember at the time, the water level had risen, so they couldn't even find the area that he had been staying until the water level receded. And then, and only then, was when the Laundries went out there and they basically pointed out where Brian and where his property was.
In and where this fits in, because we have the allegation, the civil lawsuit, that they were trying to help him get out of the country, but now this burn envelope letter is part of the equation. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly where this all fits in chronologically and how it fits into the relationship that existed between Brian and his mother.
I guess the most I can say, because again, it was undated, and so I'm guessing when the letter was actually written. Again, I'm fairly certain it was between the time period of Gabby's passing and then Brian committing suicide. So I don't know the exact date it was written. I don't know when it was delivered, but it was found on Brian, or actually it was found in the van when he came back. So I'm led to believe that he had that, he received that before he came back to Northport, but I don't know that for certain.
Oh, so the letter was found in the van.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. No, the letter was found in the Laundrie's home, but it had been taken out of the van.
Gotcha. Okay. So
that's very interesting. So here we have the letter was found in the Laundrie's home. However, they retrieved it from the van. And I don't know, could that be considered tampering with evidence? Was there intention to hand it over, or was there intention to hide that evidence, that documentary evidence? Very interesting revelations we're hearing about today.
Now, according to Pat Riley, of course, who we're on the phone with here on WFLA now, there's this the presence of this letter that exists. Pat, did you read the letter today while you were with FBI Tampa?
I did.
What can you tell us about it other than what it said on the cover of the envelope?
I can tell you that the letter contained an offer from Roberta Laundrie to assist Brian Laundrie.
And you won't tell us what?
I prefer not to say exactly what it said until I have the letter in front of me, or you have the letter in front of you and you can see exactly what it says. To
assist Brian in something, but again, this was found and was taken from the van, but found in the Laundrie home. So it's likely dated at some point before Brian returned home to Northport, or at least in that time window. So you're alluding to, and you're not telling us what it is, but you are alluding to Brian being offered help by his mother, Roberta, to do something that we're not being told what that is at this time. Correct. Okay. Your reaction to this story that Brian left behind. I'm sure by now, of course, you have read the 8 pages of the notebook. I'm sure by now that you and your clients have had an opportunity to at least process it. What do you make of Brian Laundrie's story that it was?
Although there were no charges or against the parents for assisting Brian Laundrie in escaping, that was all thwarted by the fact that he committed suicide. However, in this note, it's clear that she offered to help him. So had he lived, could this have been prosecuted? Assisting a fugitive? My thoughts are yes, but we never find that out because, of course, he committed suicide. That he heard a splash, a scream, that she was cold, and that he was told by her not to leave her side and to stay by the fire.
and this story that has been presented by Brian and his final words to the world. What do you and your clients make of this story?
That's a version. There's another version. I don't have a copy of the other version yet, but I've been advised there's another version that he authored that we will be getting, hopefully through the Freedom of Information request, that does not entirely match up this particular version.
So you're saying that there is a second note of confession?
Yes.
And is it a written note of confession, or is it another different form of a confession? I ask this because I know that these two were so tech savvy, and somebody who really lived a lot of their life, at least they were very prevalent on social media. So is this a written note, or is...
Lieutenant Pete Franzo had said in the chat that almost begging to the fact that Brian Laundrie was almost saying, he didn't mean to kill her, that type of thing. And that's not uncommon with murderers that do that. In fact, many murderers in their confessions, they have a very difficult time in retelling the story of the actual murder event. And Lieutenant Franzo said that potentially he was doing that. He was dumb as a fox, as they say, to potentially raise the specter of a manslaughter charge instead of a murder 2 charge. I don't doubt that. I think there's a very good possibility of that.
Is this something else?
It's on a device.
It's a device. Is it a
Yes.
Is it a typed out note?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
So you're saying that there is a second note that has been typed out on a device that you do not have possession of and was not part of the gathering of evidence today by FBI Tampa?
Correct.
And I want to just confirm, are you saying that the story that is told in this digital note doesn't match what is laid out in this written note?
It's similar, but it's not the same. But neither, this note makes no sense as to what happened.
In what way? Please elaborate.
My understanding is that the area where Gabby's body was found was not very far away from where Brian Laundrie could have gone and sought help for her if he wanted to.
Can you provide any explanation?
Of course it doesn't make any sense because he's trying to cover his ass, and he's thinking post facto of, what will be believable about me trying to save her? When in essence, that was the last thing on his mind, trying to save her. He was trying to kill her. Coffee girl, what kind of help offer? Mental help disposing of a body, etc. It doesn't make sense. If the letter was her offering to get him out of the country or hide a body, wouldn't she been arrested? Well, we don't know what the time frame was of when this letter was recovered. I believe it must have been between the time that Brian had fled into the Myakkahatchee Preserve, and at that point he was missing. So I don't think they were going to charge Roberta Laundrie. And then the facts as we know him after that was that he committed suicide. So he wasn't alive after that.
And this would be one of the first questions that I would ask for Mr. Bertolino, who did have conversations with Brian before he went into the Carlton Reserve and claimed his own life. Is there any reason why, that to your understanding with this story and this version of events, why Brian didn't call 911 or specifically seek out help in another form before carrying out, in his words, or in really laying it out for our audience here based on the story that he presented, what was a mercy killing?
Well, I can't answer that. I wasn't there. I can only say that I don't believe his story.
Okay. Do your clients believe the story?
Oh, no.
Where does this fit in now legally, Pat? Going forward, you
folks, just so you know, the person that Brian J.B. Buono is interviewing is the Petito's attorney, and he's talking about the evidence as it relates to them, and also as it relates to the Laundrie. He's the attorney for the Laundrie family is Stephen Bertolino. This is not him. This is the attorney for the Petitos.
You and I had conversations earlier this week about how this was just coincidence that the pretrial hearing, the hearing on the motion to dismiss, was on Wednesday, and that just by pure coincidence, that today, Friday, the 24th, June 24, 2022, that today was the day that you and Bertolino were at FBI Tampa to pick up and receive this evidence. Where does this now fit into the legal picture as far as the civil lawsuit? There are so many people around the world who have been clamoring justice for Gabby, and so many people around the world that have just been clamoring for the truth overall. So where does this now, we're getting a lot of new information today. We're hearing the news story that has been presented by Brian Laundrie in his final words in the notebook. You're now talking about a letter that exists between Roberta Laundrie to her son with some aggressive language on the envelope of that letter, and then also as well now a digital note that you.
You know, folks, a very interesting thing is that, and I think that J.B. Buono and the attorney are trying to allude to, is that the release of this information and the timing of it was not accidental. You know, now the civil case is coming up to see if it proceeds. All of a sudden, this treasure trove of, cart full of information, of evidence is coming out. I find that gratuitous, and it's not something that just happened by happenstance.
Who says partially contradicts the written note that we have presented in front of us today. So where does this all fit into the puzzle that is this civil lawsuit?
I think it's too early to tell. I want to wait until through the discovery process we have all of the information and we have the freedom of information. We get our documents through the freedom of information request, and then I'll be in a better position to analyze where it all fits in.
I have submitted a Freedom of Information Act request as well. Are we on? Are we expecting to hear back on that FOIA now that the FBI has released that evidence? Are we in an accelerated timeline to get perhaps some of those FOIA requests responded to?
I can't answer that. I can't speak for the FBI.
Okay. Pat, with Mr. Bertolino defending, of course, his clients, and of course you advocating for your clients, a big question, of course, that has come into this is, and we were talking about this earlier, is remorse. And whether or not Brian expressed remorse, and whether or not you believe that Chris and Roberta Laundrie have remorse. Stephen Bertolino on News Nation, speaking to Brian Entin the other night, Wednesday night, said that he and his clients have no regrets with how they handled the situation. So remorse is something that I have asked questions about.
You know, folks in the chat and folks listening, I find that very hard to believe that the Laundries and their attorney, Stephen Bertolino, have no regrets in regards to how this case was handled. The direct results with how this case was handled is that Brian Laundrie committed suicide. So had they handled this differently, is there not the potential that Brian Laundrie wouldn't have killed himself? So I guess they're okay with that if they're saying there's no regrets, because the way it was handled led to Brian Laundrie committing suicide. They can't think of any other eventuality that could have occurred had they handled this differently. And look, we all said, and I've said before, and we've had Joe Murray on, no one in this country has to incriminate themselves. You're not required to do that. But there are also certain responsibilities that come along with that, and certain things that can occur through not coming across with the truth at the right time.
I've asked our audience here, and 76% of our audience has said that they don't believe that Brian was remorseful as far as his last words here. Do you believe that there is remorse in the words of Brian Laundrie, and do you believe that there is remorse from Chris and Roberta Laundrie as well?
I can't speak about Chris and Roberta Laundrie because, no, I'll certainly say I've not seen any remorse on their part. As far as Brian is concerned, in reviewing this notebook, I'm not seeing remorse in it. I'm seeing a lot of self-pity, but I'm not seeing remorse.
What do you think is the future of this story? We went into this live stream, and some people commenting along saying this is over, it's time to move on, other news in the world that we need to be focusing on. And then, of course, we now get the letter providing this explanation. and this opening up new questions, this opening up now even more questions, because you're telling us that this is only.
You know, folks, I just want to point out, I mean, for everyone that's been following this case, this information is yeah, it's important. It's important because we all want to know what the hell happened, when it happened, what was his state of mind, why was it premeditated, premeditated. When did it happen? Did his parents know about it? We want to know the answers to all those questions, but is it a necessary thing in regards to this case? There's a very good potentiality that this civil case, and this is of my opinion and several legal experts, it may not go forward, but this is bringing the truth out. And everyone that's followed this case wants to know the truth. They want to know what the hell happened here. We want to know the truth.
A small part of the story. You're saying that there is more to be told. Where does this go from here, Pat, before we let you go?
Wow. I guess until we get Judge Carroll's rulings, I don't know where this goes. But if we get the ruling that we're hoping for, I think there's going to be a lot of information that we get to discover that has not been made public to this point because the Laundries have remained quiet. So I'm hoping that as this moves forward, we'll get more information from them.
And what is the end goal? You're filing a civil lawsuit. There's the wrongful death lawsuit. Of course, there's monetary amounts listed in these documents. What are your clients? What do Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mom, Joe Petito, Gabby's father, what do your clients want as a result of all of this now coming out 6 months after the FBI concluded their investigation?
Well, they want everyone. Well, what they want at the end of all of this is justice. They want Brian Laundrie's estate held responsible for what Brian did, and they want a jury to tell the Laundries that what they did, with the knowledge that they had, having had the relationship that they had with the Petito family, that what they did was wrong, and they have to atone for it.
Pat Riley, calling in to WFLA Now to share some more news on a day that has been filled with news regarding the Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie story. Pat, thanks for taking some of your time to join us today. And I offer, if they are watching, I offer Stephen Bertolino, even though he had said that he is not going to be commenting on this further, I offer him the same opportunity. I am as fair as they come. Stephen Bertolino, if you'd like to call, you have my phone number, and I offer you the opportunity to respond. Pat Riley, thanks so much for joining us.
So J.B. Buono was interviewing Pat Riley, who is the attorney, the civil attorney for the Petitos. You know, one of the questions that was asked was, what is justice in this case? What is justice? Obviously, no one is going to be tried criminally. So how can a civil case provide justice? And will the civil case go forward? These are some of the questions we have here. We all remember, well, maybe us older folks remember the O.J. Simpson case. And O.J. Simpson was found not guilty in they called it the trial of the century. However, when they tried him civilly, he was found criminally liable. And that gave some closure to the Goldman family and to the Brown family and to the millions and millions of people that were watching. Not that the millions of people that were watching or plaintiffs and are ones that are important in these cases. But it's always good to have, as Joe Murray says in the chat, justice being served. You want justice to be served. This case, I mean, is it just coincidental that all of this evidentiary material has just come out on the heels of the potentiality of the case going forward? Is that something that we're looking at here? Is this coincidental? I don't believe so. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. If you like this show, please go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. If you'd like to support us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel with, count them, 5 different levels. And you see the folks in the green font are our fans or our subscribers, whatever you'd like to say. So we'd appreciate your support. You know, I can't help, but when I think of this case, I always go back to the Moab police and how everyone thought that that was mishandled and that was the key to this whole case. And that created the potentiality and maybe even the atmosphere for a murder to be committed, which in fact occurred. However, the stop by the Moab police, which I'm going to bring up on the screen, happened a full 2 weeks before Gabby's murder. So I just want to play a little of this because I just think that this is so important.
Off your engine, go ahead and set your keys on the dash for me, all right? What's your guys' names?
Gabby.
Gabby, Brian, okay. What's going on? How come you're crying?
I'm sorry, we've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
It was a long day. We were camping yesterday, and camping got discount supplies and stuff. I'm sorry I hit the bump there.
I was distracting him from driving. I'm sorry.
Can I get you to step out of the vehicle?
You know, folks, when we watch this, and I know that I've spoken to a lot of people that are known as domestic violence experts, and I always thought I was a semi-expert since I did 27 years and I was a sergeant of police that responded to hundreds of these live domestic violence incidents. However, there's a lot of experts in the chat, a lot of experts out there that have told us, oh, you can't see. She's screaming for help. And with that in mind, I want everyone to watch this with that. Is she screaming for help? And what are the red flags in this incident?
For me, man.
Yeah.
Just hang tight right there. Do you mind if I take your keys and just put them on your hood? SO229. I have the female that was on the passenger seat separated from the male. Keys are on the hood. You want to tell me what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days, sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him. I just like, I guess my vibe is like, I am.
Infamous truth teller in the chat says yes from a domestic violence survivor. Infamous truth teller, I feel your pain and I accept that as an expert testimony.
Like in a bad mood, and I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I used to work at an organic juice bar, but I just quit my job.
Okay.
I was a nutritionist. That was my
That's
job.
cool.
And I just quit my job to travel across the country, and I'm trying to start a blog. I just have a blog and stuff. So I've been building my website. So I've just been really stressed, and he doesn't really believe that I could do any of it. So that's kind of been like I don't know. He's like down there. I don't know. We've just been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before.
I guess that's a pretty good sign when she said we've been fighting all morning. But, you know, as we said, I think the police spent an hour and 10 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes on this job, which we, as police officers, know that that's a lot of time to spend on a DV incident out in the street.
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of
Told
your
me
OCD?
He told me I needed to calm down. Yeah. But I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time. And he really stresses me out. And this is a rough morning.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't I sit you down in the back seat of my car? You're not in any trouble, okay? I'm not going to be putting handcuffs on you. You obviously don't have any weapons. I'm going to get you into the air conditioning, let you take a breath, relax a little bit, and then I'll come back and talk to you in a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
All righty.
You know, at some point in this incident, they did receive a call that he was witnessed on the street slapping her across the face. We didn't learn about that till much after that, but just in the context of watching him here, realized that that call had been made at some point during this incident.
She just worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going because we want to go hike arches before the stuff like that.
Okay. You want to tell me about those scratches on your face?
She had her cell phone in her hand. That's why I was pushing her away because she wanted me. I like the keys so I could walk away. I said, let's just take a breather and let's not go anywhere. Let's just calm down for a minute. She was getting worked up, and then she had her phone and was trying to get the keys. So I got away. I was just trying to. I know I shouldn't push, but I was just trying to push her away to go. Let's just take a minute, step back, and breathe. And you see, she got me with her phone.
Can I see your hand? Oh, you got a mark right here.
Oh, that's from a wire.
That's from a wire?
Yeah.
You want to tell me about hitting that curb?
Hitting the curb was her grabbing the wheel.
Did she grab the wheel?
Yeah. She said, I can't believe we're getting pulled over, and then she grabbed the wheel.
What about the speed? Did she take over the... Did
No,
she
I
take over
thought-
the pedal on you?
If I was going fast, I'm sorry. No, it's probably just the moment of like, I'm still shaking now. The adrenaline, seeing the lights flashing up, and then her gripping the wheel. So if I sped up, I'm sorry about that. Or if I was speeding beforehand, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it took quite a bit to catch up to you. So, yeah.
I'm sorry about that. We're just going into the park again to get water because we have a 6-gallon water container to fill up. So we're just grabbing water for the hike.
Guys, Joe Murray reminds me that the caller never said slapping her across the face. He just said slapping her. Okay, I'll take that as the truth. I thought that it had said slapping her across the face, but you say just slapping her. But that's pretty bad, Joe. That's qualifies for DV.
Okay, and I was trying to keep everything calm and quiet because they're planning still to go for a hike, but then she grabbed me. I'm really sorry about that.
Of course. Do me a favor. You want to go ahead and just take a seat right over here on the curb for me?
And if I was speeding, I'm sorry. I want to apologize.
You don't have anything in that pocket or anything?
You know, Shakespeare said, "You doth protesteth too much," and that's all that Brian Laundrie does. Is he apologizes too much? You know, he just apologizes for everything. Oh, I took a breath. I'm sorry. I breathed the air. Oh, I was going fast. I'm sorry. I sped. Oh, I hit the curb. Did I damage it? I'm sorry. So that makes me a little bit crazy.
Like that, do you? Yeah. Nope. Just the wallet? All right. And then, do you mind lifting your shirt so I can check your waistband?
I got
Turn around for me real quick. Perfect.
nothing.
I just want to make sure. That's all, man. Go ahead, do me a favor. Take a seat, all right?
Wendy McDonald. The call was the reason they pulled them over. Why they went after Gabby and not that piece of shit is beyond me. In this video, you can see Gabby's face where he slapped her. Okay, Joe Murray was just saying the caller said he slapped her, not across the face. So I don't know. I'd have to hear the caller again. That was a while ago. I listened to it.
Oh, do you have your ID on you?
In the car, if you want to come with me,
No, we'll just do this. Just go ahead and take a seat.
You come with me, I'll give you
No, you're fine. What's your first name?
Brian?
Brian? Is that layman spelling?
B-R-I-N, yeah, and L-A-U-N.
B-R-I-A-N. And then your last name?
L-A-U-N.
L-A-U-N.
D-R-I-E.
D-R-I-E?
Yep.
Laundry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's your date of birth, Brian?
I'll say crisscross applesauce, but can I just sit in the shade because I'm bald? No, it's okay. I'll give you some shade. Sound good?
Alright, just hang tight for me. SO229. I need a 29 name and date of birth.
Talks to Angels. Technically, shouldn't Gabby have been arrested with the way this all went down? You know, we had spoken about that, Talks to Angels, and we had dissected this in many different ways, and we did actually come away with that early on in the investigation. But of course, that was also before anyone knew about the phone call about him slapping her on the street. So yes, we don't agree with that assessment. I mean, we don't disagree with that assessment.
First name Brian, layman spellings, last name Laundry, Lima Alpha Uniform, November Delta Romeo India.
You know, it's funny how other police departments use different words for phonetically spelling a name. Like in New York City, Laundry would say Larry, Adam, Union, Nora, David, Robin, Ida, Edward. We would use the names, those common names, and that's uniformed so that there's no doubt that you said Edward. Like, but they're here in this area, he's saying I forgot what he used for L, but he's using Alpha. They'll use words like universe, and I forget national. They'll use words that aren't universally used, so we laugh at that in New York City Police Department.
Where'd you hit him? You slapped him first? It's on his face? How many times did you slap?
Bravo Romeo India Alpha November.
And then what? And his reaction was to do what? going to be out of Florida. He just grabbed you? Did he?
Indian paintbrush abusers label their victims as being mentally ill so they can deflect attention from their abuse to victim. It's a form of gaslighting. Indian paintbrush, that's true. You're right. That's absolutely 100% true.
Did he hit you though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, but then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you. Because, you know, where did he hit you? Don't worry, just be honest. He slapped your face or what? Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. So has he been drinking?
No, we don't drink.
Okay. What was up with this?
All right, folks, I'm not gonna play this whole thing. Basically, the result of this was that no one got arrested. They were separated, I believe, for the night. People argued over the fact that had someone been arrested, this may have saved Gabby's life. I don't personally agree with that, but people want to say that the potentiality was there, that it could have saved her life if he got arrested. But the law didn't just doesn't allow to arrest somebody without the elements of the law being broken there. And we could argue this to the end. In fact, the Moab police hired an outside consultant to go over this whole incident and to make recommendations. And one of the things that we had argued about was that they were talking about disciplining the officers. And we had thought that the officers did an exemplary job, but yet that's law enforcement. Something happens, it gets a big view in the public eye. They want someone to pay with an ounce of flesh or more than that. And that's what was going on here, you know. And we don't know exactly if anyone did get disciplined. We know that the outside agency finished their investigation and they did find some wrongdoing, but we don't know if the local police department decided to discipline.
Yeah, Dr. Ludwig, I thought it was interesting that the letter was released today, and you mentioned that you think that he wanted people to read it. It almost did read like that, almost like he was trying to justify what he did to the world.
Absolutely. And
this is a pretty good assessment from a psychologist on what we're all here trying to say, that Brian Laundrie was full of excuses. And I think she articulates this pretty well.
And I think he was trying to protect his parents in the letter. And I think we also see psychologically something very interesting where Brian says that Gabby was the love of his life and he couldn't imagine living without her. And I do believe that part to be true, because with violent partners who kill their lovers, very often they're highly dependent individuals. And when they kill their lover, they then realize how dependent and lost they are without this other person in their life to beat and to blame and to target. So I do believe he was suicidal after he killed Gabby and didn't know what to do with himself. But here we see the sociopathy that he has. If you look at the writing, it's very neatly written. He wanted people to be able to read his writing, read his narrative, protect his parents, and have a sense of what he wanted the world to envision the ending of Gabby's life the way he wanted us to see it, not the way it really happened.
So disturbing. Jennifer, the part of the letter where he says that Gabby hurt herself and fell in the river, in the stream, really. You know, I was out there, Jennifer. I was in the spot where Gabby was killed. I saw where the van was. I had incredible cell phone service out there. I had no issue with cell phone service. The area was not that big from where the creek was. It's about a 5-minute walk to the van. I mean, the story doesn't seem to.
So, you know, something there, he's telling you that the walk from the stream to the van was about 5 minutes. And Gabby weighed all of about 125 pounds. He couldn't carry her 5 minutes away to the van. I think his story is incredible. I think it's self-serving. And I have no respect for Brian Laundrie. I think he's a weasel. And I think he is, no matter how anyone tries to paint him in this, he's not a sympathetic character. I don't care what anyone says.
Add up that you couldn't go get help or make a phone call, Jennifer.
Yes, quite frankly, evidentiary-wise, this is a ridiculous assertion, and an assertion to try in some way to make his actions look justified. And we call them self-serving statements, and we see them often with criminals and sociopaths. And it was typical of someone who is a domestic violence abuser, and not surprising.
And he, you know, also after this apparent thing where he says she hurt herself and yada, 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 he still managed to get in the van and drive all the way home and use her debit card and then hide out and all of the rest. Dr. Ludwig, I want to read you a part of the letter where he describes why he rushed back to Florida. He writes, I rushed home to spend my time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James or TJ killed me. He also doesn't have great grammar, by the way. But I wouldn't want them to spend time in jail over my mistake, even though I'm sure they would have liked to. I am ending my life not because of a fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. So it seems
bullshit. He fears punishment. He's a little weasel. And you know something? Everything was clear about killing her. Everything was clear about driving home to Florida. Everything was clear about trying to establish an alibi and trying to establish a lower level of culpability. But all of a sudden, he's disoriented about the darkness.
Seems like he was planning to kill himself maybe before he even got home. He talks a lot about Gabby's family. I mean, do you think he really cared about them? Did he really care about her family?
You know, it's hard to know. Even killers sometimes see themselves as really good people. So Brian could have felt that he did love Gabby. He loved the family. And, what's interesting, though, is that he goes back home and his family acted very odd, not the way normal parents would act whose son was in this position. And it's almost like a regression. I wonder if his family enabled him in some way. They knew that he was troubled, and it sounds like the mother is troubled as well, and that they would somehow fix it, or he needed to be in their presence. So I find that interesting, that somehow I imagine his parents or family had been protecting him for a long time when he misbehaved. And I'm sure he would get in trouble a lot. And I'm sure they knew something.
You know something? This psychologist hit it on the head. I think his parents were enablers for his behavior. They always supported him, even though his behavior was inappropriate. And she hit it right on the head.
Something was off with him. But I think we need to be suspect, because this is a sociopath who wants us to believe what he's saying. And he sees himself as a good person who went awry, who went off, who impulsively did the wrong thing at times. Because at the end of the letter, he says, I hope Gabby's parents will like that I'll be eaten by animals. So he understands that Gabby's parents will hate him after this event.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing was the very end of the letter. He says something about don't litter and pick this letter up because Gabby didn't like littering. I mean, you're talking about killing your fiance and then you're talking about picking up litter. It didn't make much sense. Real quick, I've only got a few more seconds, Jennifer, but you heard Dr. Ludwig talking about the Laundries. Do you, Jennifer, think they knew? Do you think they were in on this?
I don't think they planned it with him. I think they absolutely knew right after it occurred. And I'm not so sure there couldn't be accessory after the fact or aiding and abetting I know it was considered by the FBI. Clearly, they've returned all the evidence. Clearly, the case is closed. But I think this evidence would show that civilly, which just requires a preponderance of the evidence as opposed to a reasonable doubt requirement, I think I'm thinking the Petitos and the Schmitz might have a good civil case here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this moves forward. I didn't expect this today. You both have been following this case closely also. I didn't expect that notebook was going to reveal all that. And I certainly didn't expect we were going to find out today, just a couple of hours ago, about this new letter from Roberta to Brian. That really took me off guard. Jennifer Coffendorfer and Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you so much for coming on tonight to discuss. We appreciate it.
So, I thought that was pretty eye-opening, and I think a lot of us agree that Brian Laundrie was a mama's boy. It looks to me like his family definitely were enablers to his behavior, and just incredible, some of the stuff that went down here. I just want to do a quick ad. Joe Murray. Joe Murray happens to be in the chat. If you're looking for a great defense attorney in the New York City area, the New York metropolitan area, Joe Murray's your guy, a retired member of the service, a retired police officer, former boxer, great attorney. You want to reach Joe, jmurray-law.com. His cell phone number is 718-514-3855. You can reach him on his email at joe@jmurray-law.com. jmurray-law.com is his website. We frequently have him on as a guest. We pound heads with him. We don't agree with him very often, but he's a great guy and a great attorney. One of the things with this case, and will the civil case ever go forward? Will it? We don't know. I mean, that's one of the questions that, the big question, the overall legal question, are you required to incriminate yourself? And the answer is no. And none of us I'm not going to say none of us, but most of us don't like the way the Laundries conducted themselves in this, in protecting their son when his fiance was laying in a field dead at his hands. And yet they kept their mouth shut and never said anything. I want to just play this, to me, where Ashley Banfield went at it with Stephen Bertolino. I just think this is pretty interesting. I'm going to play it. You've seen it probably before, many of you that have watched my show, but I just think it's pretty damn interesting to watch.
Conversations with Brian, and I had conversations with Chris and Roberta, and I had conversations with them together. I know these people. Some of the parts of the conversations when they were all together had nothing to do with attorney-client privilege. And
when you were together, what did he tell you? Because there's no privilege when you're all together talking. And you did say on this program that you did have conversations both days with them all together as a family meeting. What did they tell you? Because that isn't privileged.
I disagree. I think, you can represent multiple clients, as you know. You can get waivers of representation, as you know.
No, you can't. You can't have that conversation in criminal proceedings, and that does mean that the privilege is waived. You can do it in real estate. And, gosh, will you come back on Monday? I have 22 seconds left until the black cutoff of this program happens. But I have not finished my conversation with you, Mr. Berlino. Would you come back Monday?
I don't think that's possible. Someone else wants me on Monday. I don't know why.
I'm calling you Monday, Mr. Berlino. Thank you for spending the hour with us.
Have a good.
I don't think Steve Bertolino wanted any part of her after that. I think she had bested him in a little, some headbanging together. I don't know if I have the, I don't know if I have the, let's see. I don't know if I have the little headbanging they did on her show, but they went at it for a while, and I think that she had bested him in regards to that. Joe Murray, I'm going to say what he said because he's questioning Ashley Banfield. He says Ashley Banfield was 100% wrong about dual representation. So Joe claims, and I don't have any reason to doubt Joe Murray, because he's an outstanding attorney, and believe me, he knows the law. So I don't, but apparently, Joe, one of the things is that Stephen Bertolino didn't know the law because he chose not to go back at her. So apparently he wasn't sure of this area of law, so he didn't challenge her. I have a little bit of them going at it, and to me, this was great television. I'm going to put it on right now.
It's all just surprising because Josh Taylor said today they were in lockstep with the FBI all the way along. Even the Northport police chief tweeted out, get us an interview
No,
with your
Ashley,
client
you are
on the
wrong.
following Wednesday.
Play that
No,
clip
that's what
again.
they told
Let's
us
do it
today.
now.
That's what
No,
they told us today.
Play the clip you just played, and let's listen again where he says, "I do not know," because that's what he
Okay.
says. Ashley.
I'm telling you,
I thought
they
you wanted
told our
clarity.
Brian Enton today
Ashley,
in a whole. It's a 15-minute interview, sir. It's a 15-minute interview, and they said that they've been operating in lockstep with the FBI all the way along.
Okay, play the clip you played a moment ago, and let's listen to him say,
Okay.
"I don't know."
You know what? We're going to
I
wrap
thought you
that
wanted
clip up.
clarity, Ashley.
We
thought
absolutely
you wanted
100%.
clarity.
That's why you're here. 100%. And we're going to rack that clip up. It takes a minute or so. I'm going to go to break, get the control room to do it. And after the break, we'll play it and we'll get the clarity on that. Is that okay, Mr. Bertolino?
That's fine with me.
I thought that was pretty interesting that they banged heads a little bit, but that's the nature of well, an attorney is a counselor. He's your advocate. It's a controversial and it's a confrontational field, as Joe Murray will tell us all the time. So this case is very interesting, and really what it hinges upon now. Obviously, I don't think anyone is going to get charged criminally. And there is also some argument as to whether or not this case will go forward civilly. And I know I've had Joe Murray on several times, and he says that no, it will not go forward civilly. The judge is going to just throw this out, but that's yet to be seen. We won't know if, in fact, this case will go forward civilly. That's going to be decided by a judge. But it's also questionable as to why, why did all this evidence just all of the sudden come out now? Why did it all of a sudden appear now? Has something to do with the civil case? You bet. It definitely has something to do with the civil case. And I'd question that. But, this is all going to be decided by a judge, and what happens with this case going forward from now on will be the judge's decision.
Got it. They were going to release it right away and hope that this sort of narrative took over. I don't know. It's all very interesting.
I thought of the same thing, and I tried I tried to put on my lawyer hat a little bit and put myself in Bertolino's frame of mind or Chris and Roberta's frame of mind. Did they think that this was going to exonerate Brian or alleviate some of the pressure on their family by giving them Brian's take of it? Because again, as we illustrated on the YouTube stream before we jumped on live here on Facebook Live, we talked about all the opportunities that Brian, despite what happened, whether it was an accident, an accidental death of Gabby, or an intentional death. Listen. Brian intentionally killed Gabby. He indicated that. But whether or not it was the aftermath of an accident or whether or not the entire thing was an intentional act of evil, regardless of how you feel about it, the aftermath and the events that occurred afterwards, Brian had so many opportunities to do the right thing, and he didn't. And he kept doing the wrong thing over and over and over and over and over again until his final moments. And so there's just, I can't wrap my brain around trying to figure out exactly how this fits in to the strategy that Bertolino and the Laundries have as far as going forward. Perhaps it was in the...
And I think there is a strategy. I do. I mean,
me too.
Or maybe they just knew that people would forever talk about this notebook and there'd be, conspiracy theories, and maybe they just thought, let's just get it over with and put it out there
and rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak. Or perhaps was this intended for one person? Was it intended for Judge Carroll to look at this and say, okay, the notebook's out there, the public interest in this is going to die down, and perhaps there isn't as much, because we had on Peter Tragos, who's a great attorney here in the Tampa Bay area. We had him on for a stream earlier this week, and he indicated that, listen, that the public fascination with this case, there is no doubt, is going to have some form of an impact on the pretrial hearing and as well as should this proceed to trial. So there is that public arena component to it. Was this put out there to perhaps influence Judge Carroll's decision, or is Judge Carroll?
But I almost think, in my mind,
folks, he hit it on the head. What is this put out there? To influence the judge's decision, but through the court of public opinion. And you may argue, oh, that's not, but it's done all the time. The court of public opinion becomes important. Look how important the press is in all these things.
Almost influences him in the opposite way.
That's what
because
people
I
have
mean,
been saying, too.
hopefully it doesn't influence him because they're not supposed to be influenced and it's supposed to just be what's in the lawsuit. And, but if he is watching all of these developments, it's now back, at the forefront of the news. People are interested again. There's new questions. I would think that it would be helping the Petitos in a way from that perspective. From the legal civil perspective.
There's a lot of people that agree with you, and a lot of people saying that now the Notebook is out, it almost re-inflamed people and got them more once again reinvigorated regarding the story, because they want to know again why Brian chose the actions that he did in the aftermath of Gabby's death, and why there wasn't more of a ethical decision process that was laid out by his parents, by Chris and Roberta Laundrie. Also, as well, I can't not bring this up. I can't avoid it anymore. The amount of comments that I get from people, Brian, and how my inbox has been blowing up from people saying that they're not so sure that these are Brian's last words, that this is not, people want a handwriting analysis of this. The FBI has indicated that this is.
It's amazing. So many people question everything. They question whether his remains were his remains. They questioned the bones. They questioned the teeth. They questioned everything. We have a society of non-believers in evidence of whether, and I would think that they can do a pretty easy handwriting analysis, and they probably have done it already. But it's amazing to me that folks are already questioning that.
Is in fact the final 8 pages. Of course, they have indicated as much, and we have this now in as we understand it, this final word, this final message to the world from Brian. But there's still people who want there to be a handwriting analysis of Brian Laundrie's notebook. What do you make of all those comments that are coming in as well?
Yeah, I mean, the FBI seems confident that this was his, confession and suicide letter. Anything's possible. I actually was thinking, I'm filling in again next week for Banfield. I was thinking, would it be interesting to have a handwriting expert on one night? So that sort of crossed my mind too. And all the parts that he crossed out, and it would be interesting to sort of dissect that angle of it. But I think there'll always be, look, we're not going to get all the answers because he's dead. So I think there'll always be these sort of
Murray, thank you for the $9.99 super chat. There will likely be a default judgment against Brian's estate since nobody answered for the estate. If the case against the parents doesn't get dismissed, they will still cannot compel them to speak. Thank you for that legal counsel, Joe, and for the $9.99 super chat. Thank you.
Those conspiracies that people out there still believe that Brian is alive, which, to use a bird, I will say, is hogwash. As far as all the conspiracy theories that exist out there, Brian, I believe that you would second that, correct?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to. We're going to pivot now.
So, folks, that's where we're at today. I needed to do an update. I covered this case Saturday night with the great attorney Joe Murray. Many things that were said between us. We obviously take different positions. Someone in the chat said, "Oh, I'm on team Petito." Something. I'm not a judge. I'm not an attorney. I'm a retired homicide sergeant. I go where the evidence takes me, and in this case, I think the evidence obviously goes so far against the Laundrie family and against Brian Laundrie. This is entertainment. It's not a court case. I'm presenting the facts as I know them, and again, that sort of makes me laugh. I'm in team Petito. I'm not in any team. I'm just presenting this case. Folks, thank you so much for listening today. We went a little longer than I had anticipated because there's so much to this case. There's so much really good information out there. I just want to applaud all you guys for listening and all the knowledge that everyone in the chat brings to this case. It's just totally incredible. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. Have a great day and stay safe out there.